right. So what I'd like to do at this time is introduce the man himself, Steve Saleen, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing.
Well, thanks, Hans, and it's great to be here. Obviously, Laguna is one of our favorite tracks, and we couldn't think of a more appropriate place to do an announcement and a new product showing of what we're going to than Laguna, specifically in the historic race to begin with. And having all of these iconic Trans Am cars here today just adds that much more credibility. On the business side of it is, this is really our first major press conference we've held since I've had over the last several years, as a lot of people may have followed. Is we've had a little bit of identity crisis with Saleen, but about a year ago I was able to get my identity back and control the company, so we're moving forward ahead like we have for the last 30 years. And to start with that, we made an announcement last month is now we actually are a publicly traded company. You can actually look at us on the stock exchange. We're on the over-the-counter bulletin board. We're traded under SLNN. So if you like the cars now, you can actually own a piece of the company as well, and we certainly encourage people to do that. But today isn't about our company per se. Today really is more of a celebration and something that I have always followed, and that is basically the pony cars of the 60s and early 70s, I think, resonated with the American public like no other cars have. And obviously, for the cars to still be in production today, it really is a testament to how it has changed, if you will, a lot of people's perception of automotive transportation and the fun and the passion for that. But there was no other series like the SCCA Trans Am in the late 1960s and early 70s, I think, that captured the imagination of everyone in racing. And that was really a heyday. And from a personal standpoint, it influenced me. I was obviously younger then, and I will tell you, when watching all of the drivers there is what really influenced me to pursue a career in racing and obviously into automotive that we're doing today. In the past with Saleen, about 7 or 8 years ago, we started a heritage collection, and we debuted at the New York Auto Show a special edition Mustang that was a tribute to Parnelli Jones himself, and that was a very successful product that we were very happy to be part of, and the car was very successful, is still around today, and a lot of them are racing on the tracks. We then followed that up with a Dan Gurney special #2 Mustang from another iconic car that was raced in the Trans Am series, and both of those cars, if you've seen competing this weekend, are still very active in the old Trans Am, and you can see the new Saleen vehicles at a lot of the car show. But today we're really introducing 3 cars, and the 3 cars as a trio is, I think we're probably the only company in the world that actually could probably do this under one brand. And that is to take 3 iconic cars that really had different manufacturing origins, put them under one roof, add a little bit of magic and touch, and voila, come out with a very unique heritage collection that we're doing. And so I would like, at this point in time, we're going to introduce the first 2, and then we're going to show the actual product of the third one. And in the first one, obviously, is no surprise, here on my left, is one of the most iconic cars racing in the Trans Am, was the Plymouth Barracuda. And we have, obviously, the car that was driven and is owned by Andy Boone. Andy is here. Andy, can you raise your hand? And we certainly want to thank him for participating in our event, and we're happy to have him. This car was driven by Swede Savage, and Swede Savage was a young, up-and-coming race car driver that was more than competitive from the get-go. He was a teammate with Dan Gurney in running the cars. Actually, Dan Gurney drove in 4, Swede drove in all the races, and really the car that was the fastest car and the car to beat was really Swede's car. It was on the podium a number of times, finished second overall in the series that year in 1970. And one of the things that has the success of the car that went on with that was obviously how well the car did, but the drivers really is what made the cars. And so as a tribute, and some of the things that we've always done at Saleen, we've always tried to go for the extra authentic and endorsement. And I'm pleased to announce that today we have able to, as you know, Swede died in a IndyCar crash in the early 70s. And so obviously he's not with us to participate in this, but today, really for the first time, together with the car again, we are able to have his wife Cheryl and his daughter Angela joining us. And if I can invite them up on the stage to say a few words with that. It is really great that we're able to actually have the family here that represented an iconic car. I'll let Angela talk.
Thank you, Steve. I just don't really know what to say. This is incredibly overwhelming and heartwarming. I just want to thank you all for keeping the legacy alive, and thank you, Steve, for letting my mom and I be your guests today. God bless you all.
Again, it is the people that really make the racing what it is. It isn't, we always talk on the cars, but really it's the drivers that really made them what they are today. The next car I would like to talk about that we're going to be doing here is obviously is the Mark Donohue Camaro. There really is a lot that's been written about it. In fact, in 1969, Mark won the Trans Am Championship for Chevrolet, and has become one of the most iconic cars in the Chevrolet stable. Again, there's been so much written on it, really isn't much more that I could say, and we will make this the second one in our edition that will be coming out here shortly. But again, to add a little bit, if you will, to the authenticity, as you know, Mark died in practicing in a Formula One crash over in Austria. I actually sound like an obituary here on talking on some of it, which is dating it. But we're able to have, though, Mark's son, David Donohue, if I can have him up on the stage to help lend a little bit of the history that we've been able to do. And we've also completed against David Donohue when he was running as a very accomplished race car driver himself and running the pesky Vipers and other competitive cars to the Saleen vehicle. So today we are very good friends, and I welcome David. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Steve. It's Orca Vipers, not Penske Vipers, but that was okay. But I think as soon as Chevrolet announced the rebodied Camaro, it was an obvious connection. It's something that I've been looking forward to see happen, and it's great that Steve had the vision to be able to pull this whole thing together. And I'm just thrilled that it's finally happening. Can't wait to see the final product this winter. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, David. And then also, though, with the car, as I want to have Bill Ockerland. Bill, can you raise your hand there? Did very well in the last seat here, and we're certainly thankful that you could come over and join us for this announcement and be part of the celebration of the vehicle. So thank you. So you've seen two that we're coming up with. So maybe now you have probably an idea of what the next car might be. And so in 1969, Ford introduced the Boss Mustang, and we certainly know a little bit about our history with Saleen has been with Mustangs. And as I mentioned before, we did the 1970 Parnelli Jones Mustang, which won the championship. But we thought it would be appropriate, actually, to go ahead and recreate 1969, which is when it all started. And there was a teammate to Parnelli called George Follmer. And this Follmer Mustang won a number of the races. Actually, was much more competitive. And so what we've done is we've recreated a 1969 George Follmer edition Mustang. And no other than George Follmer himself. We asked him to drive it today to actually show it off on that. And then welcome, George. And maybe a lot of you don't know is that George and I were teammates. George drove the Saleen Mustangs in 1987 to help us win the championship that year. And then also George and I were teammates in driving the Ranger pickup factory truck team on that. So we've been able to get along and bump into each other, and it's only appropriate today to, I think, have a tribute to have George join us today and pay a tribute to the man in the car that made a lot of memories for all of us. So George.
Hey, let George do it!
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's a big day for me. Steve has done his usual superb job of creating a car. The work he does, his crews and his shop, phenomenal detail. And if you get a chance to get close to this car, you'll see how nice it is put together. And of course, it's a Ford Mustang, so that was a good start. Sorry, David. You know, I got to take care of Mark's kid. He's kind of lonesome. Anyway, this I think represents this car very well for a street car, and it's a current design. There's some of the things on this car I wished I had on that car. I think that car will outhandle this car. So it's a beautiful car, and I hope you'll all appreciate it. If you get a chance to drive one or get in one, you'll know how good it is. So thank you again all for coming, and I hope that everything works out for everybody to have a good success with these cars. Steve?
Thanks again. Don't go away. A little bit about the car, and again, George wishes that he had this car on the racetrack. Obviously, we've recreated the paint scheme to be very similar to the car that he drove in 1969, if he can remember back that far. But that's it has the latest in suspension, and we even duplicated the Watts Link rear suspension that is on this car is now on this car as well. We reduplicated too the mini light wheels that were the original race car, as you see them translated to the new car. The more important one though is actually the aero and some of the other touches, but it really gets down to the engine, and this is driven by a 302 cubic inch motor, the same as George, except that this one has more horsepower. So I don't know if you could actually handle that, but it's 475 to 500 horsepower. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. But it also has a radio in it. So that I don't know. Yeah, and air conditioning. So it has improved immensely. We are doing, as we are with all of these cars though, we are doing these to 250 units only as a very limited run of the car. So it'll be 250 of George's car, 250 of the Donohue Camaro, and 250 of the Savage Barracuda. The reason for the 250 is that most of the races that were run in that era were approximately 250 miles long. And one of the key races that we had, again, as part of the tribute to this, was the Mission Bell 250 that was at Riverside Raceway. And that's where all of these cars and the iconic cars ran as well. And today we have from the Riverside Museum, I want to point out that we have Doug Magnan, who is keeping all of the heritage of the race cars and everything has joined us, and part of our identity that will be with all of these cars will be with the Riverside Raceway track. In fact, so much that underneath the floor mats in all of the cars, if you look, we actually have the replica of the Riverside racetrack that's engraved in all the floor mats as part of the touch and feel things that are kind of unique about the car. Right now, there's only one other thing left that we need to do, and that's, George, you and I, if you'll join me down, you and I need to sign the dash on car number 1 here.
Yeah, right.
And make it official. So we'll go ahead and sign that real quick.
Wow. Silver right on.
I think he misspelled George.
It's official.
It's official.
Number 1.
All right, folks. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attendance this afternoon. For those of you that are invited guests and members of the press, we want to remind you we've got some lunch for you. We've got swag bags, and we've also got press kits. So please ask our hosts over here, and they'll provide you with anything you need. Again, thank you very much.